Hi all, it's that time of the week again. It's Thursday and it's August the 30th. My name's Thomas Williams. I hope you enjoy the show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Truth, Honor, and Integrity Show with your host, Thomas Williams. Tipping the balance on the scales of injustice, the tide has turned.
Hi all, clowns to the left and jokers to the right, and there's enough of them around the world, and we won't be backing down. Rest assured on that. No matter what threats they throw at us, and there've been many this week, we won't be backing down. That's a certainty. And we will see the end of your demise one day. Trust me on that. Right, this is the Truth, Honor and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and we've got a fair bit to cover tonight. There is chunks of intel and a piece at the end that will raise eyebrows and go, oh my God. Right, look forward to that, and let's get into the details of the show. And the link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org, and that's got all the archives of all the shows as well, including the must listen to ones. If you're a new member, you can certainly catch up with what THI is all about by listening to the must listen to ones, and there's also articles on there for self-empowerment, shielding, grounding and centering and all the other stuff. It's quite an expanding website at the moment. We have the Facebook page Truth, Honor and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative called MeWe.com, which is also Truth, Honor and Integrity. And if you can't find us at MeWe, send an email, and if you've got any questions or comments about the show, no proposals go to this email, please, for the foundation. And the email is truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the People's Club Foundation website link, and that's at thepeoplesclub.org. Any proposals go into that site, not the Truth, Honor and Integrity email, please. And we have the Patreon, which is for my benefit, and it's www.patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Thanks for all your donations again, and happy birthday to Aaron Bowes. I think we've got enough time. And when's the next show? 6th. Well, maybe we'll have a happy birthday for Holly as well, as we might not make it. I think her birthday's before the next show. Or the trusty admin, he puts up with a lot of nonsense on the page, more so recently, as some people have decided that they would rather not learn anything and rather stay in the dark. Never mind. Might be a reason why that's increased, contained in the show. But that will be in the second hour. Right, let's get into some news that's been going on. It's quite a varied news. It's not all about America and Trump this time. We're going pretty much around the world. Anyway, it's a rather nice story, I thought. And this has continued in Central and South America, where the countries are now starting to support each other, and that's a good thing. And hundreds of people in Costa Rica took part in a march in San Jose in solidarity with the Nicaraguan migrants who had arrived there. Thousands of Nicaraguans had fled their country to escape political crisis, all brought on by the IMF. and the march was called after an anti-migrant demonstration a week ago ended in clashes and many arrests. Now, that demonstration was condemned by the government, the private sector and several human rights organisations, and many of those taking part in Saturday's march carried banners condemning Nicaragua's President Daniel Ortega, and they demanded justice for the hundreds of people killed in 4 months of anti-government protests over there. The protesters blamed the security forces and also the paramilitary groups loyal to the Nicaraguan government, aka mercenaries, for the violence, while the authorities have labelled the protesters as terrorists. No surprise there. President Ortega has rejected calls to step down to defuse the clashes, and the United Nations Refugee Agency has said recently that an average of 200 Nicaraguans a day were applying for asylum in neighbouring Costa Rica. So it's nice to see people from other countries supporting people from other countries, because that's the way forward. None of us are any different. Doesn't matter which imaginary line or imaginary border you're currently housed in. We're all the same. And we all have a common enemy. And there's no interest in we the people whatsoever. Trouble in Australia. I think there was further oustings over there. Anyway, Scott Morrison was to be the new Australia Prime Minister after Malcolm Turnbull was forced out by party rivals in a bruising leadership contest last week. Now, he had been under pressure from poor polling, no mention of corruption and fraud and all kinds of other things, but there you go, and a looming election and a revolt by the Conservative MPs in Australia. Now, Mr Morrison, the current Treasurer, won an internal ballot by 45 to 40 over former Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, and Mr Turnbull refused to stand in the leadership contest, suggesting he may have been told to go away, and he had been staring down calls for his resignation previously as leadership speculation crippled his government, and he agreed to hold the ballot after a majority of MPs signed a letter calling for it to take place. So a change of governance in Australia. We'll find out at a later date whether it's another Rothschild's candidate, but we'll see. We'll see if we can check in on that. US authorities have found a secret drug tunnel. That's what they're calling it. I would suggest it was for other uses, stretching from a former KFC in the state of Arizona all the way down to Mexico. Now, the passageway was in the basement of the old restaurant in San Luis, leading under the border to a home in San Luis Rio, Colorado. That's Mexico, not Colorado in America. And authorities made the discovery last week and have arrested the Southern Arizona building's owner, and they were alerted to the tunnel after the suspect Ivan Lopez was pulled over during a traffic stop. It's funny. A traffic stop leads to all kinds of other incidents, but there you go. Police dogs reportedly led officers to 2 containers of hard narcotics with a street value of more than $1 million in Lopez's vehicle. And they say the containers held 118 kilograms, which is about 260 pounds, of methamphetamines, 6 grams of cocaine, 3 kilograms of fentanyl, whatever that is, and 21 kilograms of heroin. Now, they searched his home and his old KFC, and discovering the tunnel's entrance in the kitchen of the former fast food joint. I would suggest that was a trafficking tunnel as well, and using the drugs as a cover-up at this point. Similar area, not too far away anyway, next state, and the latest on the remote New Mexico desert compound, where 11 children were found living in complete filth and the body of a boy was discovered dead. Now, authorities have confirmed that the 3 defendants who were arrested on child neglect charges in the New Mexico compound have now been released from jail. Yes, released. It beggars belief. This was after a judge dismissed charges against them due to a missed deadline by prosecutors. Really? And the Taos County Sheriff's Office confirmed that Lucas Morton, Subhana Waja, and Hujra Waja left the jail late Wednesday afternoon. Now, prosecutors have other options for pursuing charges against the 3, including seeking indictments from a grand jury, and the prosecutor, John Lovelace, declined to comment on how the district attorney's office will proceed. I suspect they have not been given further notifications of how to proceed. Anyway, 2 other defendants remain jailed on more serious charges of child abuse, resulting in the death of the 3-year-old boy whose body was found at the compound earlier this month. Now, what I'm hearing is the judge is now coming under heavy fire and pressure following that ruling, and I suspect, and this is just my opinion, foul play with prosecutors who missed the 10-day deadline. They just don't do that type of stuff. And the question are, if that is the case, who are they covering up for? These people, for those who don't know, were training the kids for school shootings. This goes a lot higher than people realise, and that's why certain ones have been released. So they don't talk. I suspect those 3 will go missing permanently. Police in Argentina have begun searching properties belonging to the former president. There's another one who's going down, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, as part of a major corruption investigation. Forensic scientists, dogs and firefighters helped carry out the raids on 2 houses in Patagonia and 1 in Buenos Aires. And it comes after Judge Claudio Bernardio asked to partially lift Ms. Fernandez's immunity as he investigates bribery allegations during her presidency. Funny how they all have immunity, isn't it? Ms. Fernandez denies any wrongdoing, no surprise there. And in a defiant speech on Wednesday, the senator, who has immunity from imprisonment but not prosecution, described the investigation as shameless. Thursday's searches relates to the so-called notebook scandal in Argentina, which relates to a batch of records kept by Oscar Centeno, a driver for the public works official who worked there for over 12 years. And in the notebooks, Mr. Centeno writes about delivering bags of cash from construction bosses to government officials, which prosecutor says totaled $160 million. Construction companies often give people $160 million, don't they? Cash again. And Mr. Centeno's notebooks included a reference to money exchanged in hands at the home shared by Ms. Fernandez and her late husband Nestor Kirchner, as well as the presidential residence and government headquarters. More than a dozen people, including businessmen and former government officials, were arrested after the notebooks were handed to authorities by a newspaper earlier this year. Ms. Fernandez is also under further investigation in another 5 cases. So that's another example of a president or former president or prime minister or former prime minister being ousted on charge with corruption. I don't know the full count now. It must be somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 this year alone. It's quite a number. more stupidity, more divide and conquer, this time in North Carolina. Supporters and opponents of the recent toppling of a Confederate monument in North Carolina turned out in Chapel Hill on Saturday to assert their differing stances. 7 arrests were made in connection to a gathering on McCorkle Place, which is the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And 3 arrests were for assault, the 4th for destruction of property, and the 5th for resisting arrest of an officer. Assault, destruction of property, and inciting a riot were the other charges. And more than 100 people were at the protests, and Chancellor Carol Folt said in a conference call with journalists there were no serious injuries, but rival rallies came after 250 protesters knocked over the controversial Silent Sam Confederate statue late on Monday night. The statue was torn down, news footage showed, and police were on the scene in numbers as people held banners, chanted and marched, and Confederate flags were waving. Now, of course, CNN jumped in, no surprise there, divide and conquer, and they reported a barricade was placed around the statue site and protesters shouted, "Hey ho, white supremacy has to go." Really? These people are beyond stupid. If you think the Confederate flag or statue is a symbol of oppression and is to do with slavery, you really haven't read real history. The slavery was being perpetuated by the North. George Washington was a slave owner. They don't tell you that in the history books, do they? You know, they'll knock that down, and yet they'll put up a Baphomet with the 6-pointed star right in your face in Arkansas this week. People of Arkansas, you know what to do. Brazil, another example of South American countries protecting others now. This time Brazil, the country, announced on Tuesday it's sending its army to the border to guarantee law and order amid an influx of migrants fleeing crisis-hit Venezuela. These are not Venezuelan people, by and large. I'll talk about that in a minute. And President Michel Temer said in a televised address that Venezuela's tragic situation threatened peace in the whole of South America. Yes, it does. And millions of Venezuelans have fled their country due to hyperinflation and food and medicine shortages. Now, Brazil moves follows recent border clashes between locals and Venezuelans, and the president signed a decree on Tuesday which will deploy soldiers for 2 weeks along the border on federal roads of its northern state of Roraima. And the problem of Venezuela is no longer one of internal politics. No, it's not. It's very much external. And it poses a threat to the harmony of the whole continent, Mr. Temer said. In addition to ensuring the security of Brazilians, the soldiers' role is to look after Venezuelans' migrant safety. And meanwhile, neighbouring Peru has declared a 60-day health emergency in 2 provinces on its northern border after health authorities expressed concern to the spread of diseases from migrants. Yes, agents of death. All this with Venezuela is to do with Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood. They've been shipping into Venezuela not only the free ISIS oil that they stole, but also mercenaries, Muslim Brotherhood paid mercenaries out of Oman, Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and they're arriving in Venezuela and flooding, they used to be flooding through the Mexican American south border. Some of them arrived in Kim's location. They were caught and dealt with. They won't be coming back again, put it that way. But this is what's going on in Venezuela. It's issues to do with Obama and his Muslim Brotherhood and a load of other goons who think they can steal off every country and get away with it. So Brazil needs to step in because they'll use them next. And Mexico, given the new NAFTA signing, perhaps they're now helping. We'll see. Sad news that came out of Puerto Rico this week. It won't be a surprise to our listeners because we all knew it was BS when they announced it. But the official figure now for the deaths following Hurricane Maria is 2,975. The initial estimate that was put out was 64. Why has it taken 12 months, nearly, to add 2,911 people? Anyway, the governor, Ricardo Rossello, accepted the findings in a long-awaited independent investigation. Puerto Rico has struggled to repair its infrastructure and power grid since the storm, and is asking for the US Congress for $139 billion in recovery funds. Perhaps we shouldn't have sent some money to Israel this week and sent it to Puerto Rico instead. Governor Ricardo Rossello said at a press conference on Tuesday, although this figure is an estimate, it has scientific basis. Really. And in a statement, the White House said that the federal government supported the governor's efforts to ensure a full accountability and transparency of fatalities in last year's hurricane. Of course, Mr. Trump come under fire and was criticised for praising the federal response to the hurricane-ravaged island in the weeks following the storm, and critics accused him of showing more concern for residents in Texas and Florida after they were hit by hurricanes. I'm not too sure that was the case. Mr. Trump has gone on the on the war path again, and has now warned Google, Twitter and Facebook that they are treading on troubled territory amid a row over perceived bias. I wouldn't say it was perceived, I would say it's directly bias. And he warned them they had to be very careful after earlier accusing Google of rigging the search results for the phrase Trump news. And an aide said the administration was looking into the issue of regulation, and Google said its search engine set no political agenda, and if you believe that, you'll believe anything. Was not based or biased towards any political ideology. Oh, really? Speaking to reporters at the White House, Mr. Trump said Google had really taken a lot of advantage of a lot of people, and it's a very serious thing, adding the names of Facebook and Twitter. He said they better be careful because you can't do that to the people. We have literally thousands of complaints coming in. So Mr. Trump has fired a shot across the bows there. Signs of Iran, land of the Aryans, as it was formerly known, are cleaning house. And the Iranian security forces have identified and arrested tens of spies working in government agencies, according to the intelligence minister there, Mahmoud Alavi. And the intelligence ministry's anti-espionage unit has successfully identified and arrested numbers of them in different governmental bodies, and The security forces arrested a member of Islamic State, ISIS, formerly ISIS, ISIL, militant group in southern Iran earlier this month, and broke up a terrorist cell in the north of the country. The intelligence ministry also foiled several bombing plots, false flags, in metro stations and universities, but had not previously disclosed it to the public. So it seems Iran is cleaning house. Large supplies of chemicals. Of course, we had the chemical attack, or alleged chemical attack, in Syria, which escalated things over there. Well, here's a report on more fun and games that has been caught and is being dealt with. A large supply of chemicals has been delivered to the militants in Syria, Idlib, with the assistance of the White Helmets group. I did tell you they were not good. In order to stage a provocation and blame the Syrian government. This is according to Russia's defense ministry. And the Russian military has received information from several sources in the Idlib province that a large supply of poisonous agents had been brought into the city of Saraquib on 2 trucks from the village of Afs. Now, the Major General Gankov, head of the Russian Center for Reconciliation of the opposing sides in Syria, said the chemicals were delivered to an arms depot used by the militant group Ahrar al-Sham, nice name, accompanied by 8 members of the White Helmets organization. Helmets being the operative word. And he went on saying, adding that the cargo was met by 2 high-ranked Ahrar al-Sham commanders, and earlier the Russian Foreign Ministry warned that the US had been planning to organize a fake chemical attack in Syria in order to use it as a pretext for a strike against the Syrian government forces, and the deployment of USS Ross with 28 Tomahawk cruise missiles on board to the Mediterranean, as well as the arrival of other US warships to the Persian Gulf and Qatar, were part of preparations for that particular attack, it added. Well, hopefully that news will then stop all that nonsense. A campaign group, I think we've all been waiting for this one, by the name of the Story of Stuff Project, have just announced that they will be pursuing legal action against Nestle for illegally extracting groundwater in California for its Arrowhead brand, which has been a key contributor to the state's drought crisis. Now, thanks to generous donations from a huge number of furious citizens, the Story of Stuff Project was able to raise enough money to film a mini documentary called This Land is Our Land, and it tells the story of Nestle's removal of millions of gallons of water from the San Bernardino National Forest, and it details evidence of criminal activity by one of the world's most unethical corporations. They also found out that the permit, Nestle's permit to extract water, expired 27 years ago, but the corporation just kept on siphoning. And activists over there finally hope that justice will be served. We wish them well with that. Expired 27 years ago, Nestle. It's time that people did what they did. Was it 3 or 4 years ago? And stormed the Nestle building and shut it down for a couple of days. They should have shut it down permanently, preferably a non-violent storm, I might add. It's the last thing you want when you, as an activist, is violence. That just brings in troops and stormtrooper cops. Anyway, we wish them well. Argentina's, again, two items from Argentina this week. Government has unexpectedly asked for the early release of a $50 billion loan from the IMF amid the growing economic crisis over there again. And President Mauricio Macri said the move is designed to restore confidence in the Argentine economy. That won't work. And the Argentinian peso has lost more than 40% of its value against the US dollar this year alone, and inflation is rampant. Investors are concerned Argentina may not be able to repay its heavy government borrowing and could end up defaulting. Correspondents say the decision to speed up the IMF bailout smacks of growing desperation. And when the terms of the loan were agreed in May, President Macri said he expected the economy to recover and did not plan to use the money. We'll have more on that in the intel. Russian President for the fourth time in under 18 months. Vladimir Putin has fired, this time, 15 Russian generals. It's the fourth batch he's fired in the last 18 months. As the country prepares to launch its biggest war games in over 4 decades. And among those fired were Vladlen Aksenov and the Deputy Minister of the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations. I presume that's the Russian version of FEMA. And Sergei Yuchin, head of Federal Penitentiary Services in Russia's Omsk region. And generals in Russia are often fired in groups, experts know. 11 were fired in April, and other groups were let go in 2016 and 17. I think that's somewhere in the region of 50 or 60 that have been fired. Now, during previous rounds of dismissals, some officials were arrested for corruption. In inverted commas. And this week's case was no different. At least one general, Mikhail Begun, the Minister of Emergency Situations, was also apprehended on corruption charges for allegedly taking bribes. And experts say they suspect more arrests could soon be carried out, and the reason why generals are fired often vary, and in years past they had mixed reasons why any particular guy is let go. Be it a lost bureaucratic struggle, the leadership doesn't want a guy to become too ensconced in a position and turn it into a fiefdom. Policy differences and other unapproved corruption. I love that term. Unapproved corruption. Oh my. Now, the Russian expert who works at the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C., told Newsweek, on the last point, no one at the top is clean. Hear, hear. And that applies in all countries, not just Russia. But sometimes an official can go too far. When someone loses a bureaucratic struggle, evidence of corruption can also be found. So it's hard to tell a story or its causality without digging in deeper. Yes, indeed. No one at the top is clean. It's nothing new to people in the alternative media. We all know that. Apart from Clinton News Network and other rogue portal people. Right, this is the last of the news items before we have a music break. President Trump is now considering pulling out of the World Trade Organization altogether, saying if they don't shape up, he will withdraw from the World Trade Organization. And he said this morning before departing for a rally in Indiana tonight. And last month the US President told reporters that the World Trade Organization has treated the US very badly for many years, another one that we're funding more than anybody else, and that the Geneva-based Switzerland Rothschild will need to change their ways in future. US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has called allowing China into the World Trade Organization a mistake, and accuses the trade's body dispute settlement system of interfering with US sovereignty. Interesting term. The Trump administration has recently blocked the appointment of judges to the World Trade Organization's appeals body, and on Wednesday Washington filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization against Russia's retaliatory tariffs, which are a response to Trump's steel and aluminum duties imposed earlier this year. So that's the UN. He's fired the transatlantic, trans-Pacific, and now he's taking pot shots at the World Trade Organization. Just the World Health Organization and NATO to go. He will get there. Right. Where are we next? Yes, we are gonna play that. I received a special request this week from a group wanting to honour their man who had looked after them, who had funded them and protected them, who died this week. That message was from ISIS to John McCain. THI will play a tune appropriate for his passing. Hi all, and welcome back to the Intel and Op-Ed section, the best part, for most anyway. Those last two songs are fitting. Traitor and All Ears is Dust in the Wind. I don't think anyone who knows the real truth of No Name would disagree with that. The ones who'd like to lie, carry on living in your world of illusion. Right, where do we start with let's start with the IMF. Now, the IMF have started, in some cases anyway, in other cases the threats are ongoing, but they've started pulling out of countries, and that's a big sign of their defeat in threatening countries, threatening leaders, and also threatening banks and central banks. Now, the message to the countries who have been pledged loans from the IMF, one was mentioned earlier, please sign off on them now and see how far you get with the IMF lending money. I don't think you will receive what you've been promised, but you can try, and it will also be a further test of whether the trust or the IMF are telling the truth. If they've agreed loans, call them in now. Now, the trust, item 2, made another attempt to transfer funds, this time to a country in Africa. I won't mention the country because it leads to certain threats. Now, what was different this time is the funds went all the way through. No blocked doors, no pulling plugs. And this is a major leap forward and a promise of better things to come. Except in came the clowns, and either threatened or seduced, were unclear at this time, although we do have recordings of what was said in the bank. They threatened or seduced the bank manager to enter the bank after hours at 8:10 p.m. local time with the three clowns, one of which was the UN Security Council. And they decided between them to try and steal the funds and share it amongst each other. Now, the three who entered were all promised all of the stolen funds if they could take them, as the goal was to stop the trust and create more doubt in those who are currently looking at the trust with real intent. Now, the gist of it all is the whole thing was recorded, and the stupid bank manager not only used his own code to enter the bank that identified himself, but also used the bank email to notify there were no funds in the account at around 8:15 local time. When everyone else had already seen them there. So he confirmed he was the culprit. You know, these people are just beyond stupid. It'll be a common theme tonight. Anyway, that theft was stopped, and all the funds were then left in the account for all to see. But here's the kicker, and what we've been waiting for. The funds delivered was confirmed by the Bank of International Settlements, the agencies, the Pentagon, and also the White House. Oops. All now know we have the capability to transfer and deliver the funds. What unfolds next will be fun and games, and it has, hence the threats to myself, Kim and the team this week. Now, the $51 million that was transferred has now been transferred back into the trust after the UN security personnel failed to steal the funds, but the world now knows Manor World Holding Trust and Kim were telling the truth all along. We are expecting a whole heap of inquiries now, and we have, and we should start to move funds in the near future. I'm not projecting any dates. It will come when it comes. But in a world that's currently broke, and America under a financial assassination attempt, don't be surprised if we get a big call from the White House, and it all starts to roll. The rest of the world, including the Rothschilds, have declared financial war on America and are blocking all funds of any description coming into America. That's why the trust is able to transfer funds to other countries and not America currently. But it won't always be that way. Next item. A staggering, and I mean staggering, lack of knowledge globally on all levels, micro and macro, be it in finance, governments, heads of state, banks, normal and central banks. You'd be astonished how very little have any sort of clue what is going on or how the world works. The lack of understanding of how things work, or in our case, how they don't work, is beyond comprehension. You have no idea of how little they know how the world operates. You know, we have a world that's hanging on some imaginary, and I mean imaginary, they don't exist, Chinese elders that nobody has ever met. You've got agencies who can spy on everyone, pull video from everywhere, access bank accounts of anyone, and yet it appears no one there can do a simple search of who or what are the Chinese elders. I mean, this is beyond incompetence. And this country, America, and subsequently the world, given 85% of the rest of the world is tied to the dollar, is being financially assassinated because some generals have fake notes called dinars, zims and dongs and are waiting for their multi-billion or multi-trillion payouts whilst everyone else suffers. They believe it's going to happen. Message to you all with the badges. You will all end up 6 feet under, waiting for your payouts, as in die of natural causes. I want to make that clear. It's never going to happen. The wait will go on indefinitely until you switch on more than the few brain cells you are currently operating on. It's as simple as that. And I'll say it again. The RV requires more money just to kick-start it, never mind fulfill the end of it, than the entire money ever spent in the history of this planet. And you still think they're going to pay out? Hundreds of years in your world, thousands of years in my world, and the RV requires more than it's ever been spent in the entire history of the planet. And you still think it's going to go ahead tomorrow? Of course, they tried a new tack this week. It failed Monday. It rolled into Tuesday, it rolled into Wednesday, which rolled into Friday. Now they're telling the lower scale people that they're going to get paid first. Like that ever happens. That's because the lower tiers 3 and tiers 4, are getting tired of the shenanigans and waiting. So they will be going first. So everyone gets all up again, and tomorrow they're going to be disappointed again. There's a reason why they're called tiers, because that's all you'll get. Here is another example of Hello McFly, and I will spare mentioning the country, but this is indicative of the levels of utter synth-like behaviour, of follow a path that has always failed. Now, Kim spoke at length to this particular country and was offering them substantial funds to kickstart projects, all free. Not loans, not interest bearing, not payback, because it's dividends from the trust. Free. They did the due diligence and it all stacked up. But in came the IMF stormtroopers again, and suddenly the country decided it didn't want free money from the trust, and it would borrow with interest from the IMF. Free money, loan. Free money, loan. This is what we're dealing with. I kid you not. This is the levels of stupidity, corruption and skullduggery of those operating at the top levels of many, if not all, of the countries. Like I said earlier, I hope all the countries demand their loans off the IMF now with a 3-day payout stipulation, then come back to us when that fails. Next item, Ecuador. The coup attempt there that failed, and this has been an ongoing process currently in many countries, and this is not all due to the cabal. Because of the lack of knowledge, there are some militaries around the world in various countries who haven't been paid for months and are blaming the government. It's nothing to do with the government, because the Rothschilds et al. Stole all the government's money. So how is that the government's fault? I've already covered in recent shows how far down the scale government really is. They have no control, no power, nothing. But there's militaries all around the world who are blaming the government and attempting to overthrow them because they're not getting paid. You're not getting paid because you're all sitting waiting for imaginary Chinese elders to pay out, which they'll never do. You all have the solution. You've been given the solution. You've been shown the funds. You've been shown the codes. You've been shown we can transfer. That's it. But we are pleased with the progress on the levels of lack of knowledge, because people are in increasing numbers by the day are getting wise to what's really going on now. And we do expect more cooperation attempts to unfold in the coming days and weeks. Now, there was an incident in Russia this week, and the governor of the Central Bank of Russia, Miss Elvira, nice name, Nabiullina, nearly lost that then, who escaped into the United States, governor of the Central Bank of Russia, after she had transferred all Russian currency resources and then had her people arrange a fire in the central bank archive, destroying all the evidence. Now, the monies was transferred to a company related to Poland, but also into the US also. But within a few hours, Kim had found it all and placed it all back where it belonged. So this is further evidence of them attempting even more dangerous heists. It'll be interesting to see how Mr. Putin, who's on vacation at the moment, reacts to all that. I imagine he won't be too pleased. Next intel item. The clowns, as you know, the regular listeners to the show, have been trying to hack the quantum system, and all have failed. This time they tried a different approach, a double-pronged attack to enter the quantum system from Hong Kong, and also a naval base in Virginia. Indeed. Which is likely run by the SS Small P. Now, both of them failed individually and collectively. Both received a very humorous message, and both had their systems crashed and burned. Oops. Now, it will take them 2 weeks to a month to get their systems back up and running. If they do it again, we'll fry it again. Now, what we've been, from various sources, been told this week is the cabal and their minions are literally spending their last resources now in attempt to pull off their RV program and stop the quantum system and the trust. And the consensus is we are really seeing now the end times of how it used to be and was, and an opportunity to get a new way and a new path. All intelligences are saying they're down to the last resources. Not read for time, okay. An op-ed piece. There is a bit more intel, but this is a piece I thought I would throw in. Barack Obama. For those of you with long memories, you may remember it, but we don't. Barack Obama gave $150,000 bribe to silence the hate preacher Jeremiah Wright. Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 to go away. Remember that? Now, what I don't remember or recall was the Portal people focusing on those two incidents that much. And yet the Stormy Daniels just rolls on. It kind of amazes me. Maybe it's my age, maybe it's my sense of respect. But I don't know how Daniels is carrying on shouting her mouth off, alleging she slept with a married man and a number of other people in full public glare, which is badly embarrassing herself and her family. And at what point does she not realise she's making herself look real cheap? Women of yesteryear, would have been highly embarrassed. It's just sad that now it seems like some badge of honour to some. I slept with such and such. Really? You slept with a married man, and you think that's some sort of status symbol? It's not a good look for female role models, is it? Next intel piece that you won't get in CNN. Obama. Again, he acquired a home in Washington, D.C. for $25 million. Just so his kids could stay in the same school. I can now report he's facing eviction orders following his failure to make his $25,000 a month payments. Eviction proceedings are now underway. So he's getting thrown out of his home. Nice when his time in office there was record foreclosures. What goes around comes around. I can now give you some details of what took place with the Rothschilds and their so-called quantum system that was under Wright-Patterson Air Base. Now, their clearance, in fact anyone's clearance on Wright-Patterson, only allows them to go down 6 levels. There are 13 levels below Wright-Patterson Air Base, and the bottom 7 levels belongs entirely to the non-terrestrials. And as they are protected, all of them, under the peace treaty, the minions decided they needed more power for their system and decided to drill a hole from level 6 to level 8 to hook up with one of the non-terrestrial systems. Well, despite that, that failed also. Lucky for them, they did no real damage, because if they did, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in its entirety would no longer exist. These people are playing with fire badly. Wright-Patterson is run by SSP. A bit of gulping. Last Saturday, we decided to have a new input increase of source energy into the system. This has increased the changes that's unfolding on all levels. Why suddenly people feel a lot lighter, a lot more positive, and why others of a negative and low vibration are suddenly losing the plot. That gap will widen. It will become more obvious. And I am asking people to absorb it, process it, and ignore the low vibration people altogether. All they're going to do is pull on your extra energy. They've had enough time to correct themselves, get themselves in a better place. I did say 2 years ago, we can't help them anymore. They have to go through it the hard way. Maybe they're just not ready. They're not ready for the higher frequencies, the higher advancement in soul development. You can't drag them there. If people are not ready, they're just not ready. And I do get it bothers some people, that's their partners or their family or friends, etc. I do get that. But you can't make someone do something and fake it at this time. They can't fake higher energies. They just can't. You either have it or you don't. Your soul development, you either have it or you don't. But there will be a greater divide, and people will see more and more of the differences, not just on a people level, but varying levels. The increase in tension as the people who have remained hidden in many aspects, it's all unveiling. And we're going to have a rather interesting last four months of this year on many levels. I'm going to cover a bit more. People have been asking me about astral and harvesting and mental planes and abilities. I'll probably let's get this clown out the way first. Neil Keenan. Now, according to him anyway, it's always according to Neil, he was appointed a special one called the Amanar. No, that's not the Muppets. That's very serious. The Amanar, by the Indonesians. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Indonesian people. Now, the Amanar is to do with finance, and in particular, Islamic finance. Question is Neil Keenan working for ISIS? You know. Now, one would think with such an important position, an announcement on the Amanar website, not the Muppet one, would have been prevalent on there, except no mention. Indonesian news headlines now again. Now the ceremony for this appointment contained a fairly portly drunken man wearing no shirt holding what resembled a voodoo doll, which has been declared as a scepter, which means he is declared royal or imperial. Quite a title, and yet for such a major role it never got mentioned in any Indonesian publication. Now a small recap for the new members. Neil Keenan filed a lawsuit on behalf of the people. No, he filed it on behalf of the dragon families. Now, for THI members who know their role, the dragons, in Cabal games, I need go no further with that. But for the ones who don't, essentially Neil Keenan was trying to steal the world's resources for transfer to the East and to the Rothschild's Asian faction group, replete with non-existent Chinese elders. That's the gist of it. A simple case of strip the West of everything and give the clowns who wanted everything moved to the East, which is why all the corporations for the last 30 years have moved over there, and global financial slavery would have continued. Neil Keenan. So people are asked again about soul development, astral planes, mental planes, physical plane, and what goes on in the various levels. Now, the gist of it is humanity over a long period of time has been kept in the astral layer, which on soul development level is kind of backward. You gain all your abilities on the mental planes. Now the astral layer is where people go in the dream time, mainly, because most are stuck in the astral layer. And there's a hell version, which is where all the extinct beings and animals reside, whose only food source is the energy of the people on the physical, us. So that's largely when you are being chased down in a dream time, is where you are. And it's a trap for humanity, where harvesting and looting our energy is the gist of it. Now there's also an astral heaven, and if you go there, it's the most blissful thing you will ever experience. No pain, just pure love. But that's also a trap. It's also a trap. It's nice to experience, but you don't stay there. And the key is to get on the mental planes. There are 4 mental planes, and as you go up each one, the so-called 95% junk DNA starts to switch on. This is where you, depending on which mental plane level you are on, where you can suddenly start hearing telepathy, suddenly telekinesis, bilocate, the ability to project your body into another place or dimension, or somewhere else on the planet, or below. Your intuition goes through the roof. Your wisdom goes through the roof. Your ability to predict the future goes through the roof, depending on which level you're on. The information that you search for many years, depending on which mental plane, comes to you, not the other way round. So there's no spending 10 hours a day watching YouTube videos and reading all kinds of articles. If you are on the mental planes and you request that information comes to you in various forms. You can walk on water. You can part oceans. You can change the matter around you, all dependent on which particular level you are at. Perform magic, preferably white rather than the dark. The ability to influence weather. The ability to stop weather. All things that are considered impossible and just magic tricks. No. Now you know why they've kept humanity, the vast majority, stuck in the astral. Because suddenly you don't have to read a book or watch a YouTube, and the information comes to you, and we all have that knowledge. How long do you think this charade would continue? It wouldn't have got started. So it's a two-way attack, where they are in league with the lower astral beings and some of the jinn to keep humanity trapped in the astral layer, where they feed off us, or we all go a better way, service to others, not service to self. A healthy balance between light and dark. A respect for others. All part of your soul development. And the object is to not only get on the first mental plane, but suddenly the astral beasts will no longer exist. So the battles that you have, or many of you have on the night, are not there anymore, unless you're doing specialist mission work, which is few and far between, as so much of that has been corrected now. But it's up to all of us to strive for that soul development. It's not something the Cabal can take off you. Only you can raise your own vibration. Not me. I can help. I can guide, but I can't drag you or make you walk that path. That's down to you and your own individual growth. But this is the key to all of us. Because once you obtain the 4 levels of the mental planes, and all the great teachers of the past all had the 4 mental planes. That's why they could walk on water, because they can change matter. Because at the end of that lifetime then, with the soul traps, and the forced reincarnation and memory wipes now gone, you then go on to the cosmic level, where many of you came from to begin with. So I hope that description helped people understand it's not up to removing the cabal and the elites to jump out of the astral level. That's down to you and how you interact with other people, how you are service to others and not service to self. And like I said, they can't take it off you. They can try, but those in those mental levels have far too much knowledge and ability to fall for that trap again. Trust me. Right, let's have a song. My Shadow, kind of fitting. Hope you like this one. It's a cover version of the Tool song. We'll be back shortly. Yes, indeed. How did you love? Well, this is what we've tried to do with THI. To be different, think different, act different, and look after each other. If all the world was like THI, it'll be a far better place, in my opinion. But we have much work to do, and much progress is continuing. We're going to have Q&A now, and we're going to end with another piece that I prepared. I was supposed to do a show with, it's a long time since we've done it, although we did the one with OYM, but Randy Morgans and I haven't done a show together for a while, and we decided to do one on Tuesday. Unfortunately, we had to lie low a bit, and that got cancelled, and we're hoping to do a pre-record tomorrow. So Randy will post it probably over the weekend, and because of his format, we have to see whether it's going to go on Patreon or out live as such, but it won't be going out live for people to click on the link and listen live. It will be pre-recorded. I've also been requested to go on a show that hasn't been confirmed yet next Tuesday, called Crowdsource for Truth. It's not one I'm familiar with, but that doesn't matter, and if it goes ahead, we'll post some links for that, and we'll get some a wider audience. It's good stuff. Right, where do we start first? Are the taxes in all the Commonwealth countries also going to a UK trust? Yes. And then to a Rothschild Swiss bank account? Yes. No difference. Are these countries showing an interest in sovereignty? Yes, but I'm not revealing which ones, because they come under threat as it stands. Although some of them are telling them where to go, which is a sign of progress. Can you tell us anything about New Zealand being the big brother of Australia? I did that last week. I know that'll upset Australians, but it is true. There's a lot of cabal in New Zealand, and they rule the roost. And the SSP in a certain mountain down there. In the new system, will there be a way to remove a corrupt sovereign leader? Yes, the people will do that in the future when we learn more of the truth and accept more responsibility in it, where we have an interest to participate, not just sit back and allow corrupt, unknowledgeable clowns to rule for us. I'm hoping in the future we have sovereign leaders that are only interested in running their country for and by the people, and not for and by clans and core pirates. That's what we're working towards. Will their efforts to do crime simply not be implemented from higher up? Well, as more and more people become aware of the corruption and frauds and criminality that's been going on, more people will pay attention. And so if more people are what we call flying straight, then that type of behaviour will become minority. More people are service to others. That crime is service to self. You never give it back. Look at the drug crimes in the poor communities and the black and the Hispanics. Not just them. Do they ever give anything back to their community? No, they replicate the cabal system where the 1% in the community keeps all the money and everyone that starves. It's no different. Well, we have to change that. Where that type of behaviour is acted upon and frowned upon. So it forces more and more to act the right way. Set an example. Be the example. Any news on Central and South America? I think we covered quite a bit of that in the intel and the news tonight, in reference to Kim and a new trust paradigm, which would be much appreciated. Can we get a document eventually stating the basic rules of the new system of sovereignty? I imagine we will. People need to understand the basics clearly. Well, you don't need a document to understand sovereignty. I'm not being rude to the person who asked the question, but this is the type of thinking we need to change. It's like people saying to me, what are we going to call the law? Well, you can call it whatever you like. It's how people are going to behave and act. If everyone acted in personal responsibility, we don't need laws. They're for corporate business rules. It's as simple as that. And sovereignty is about us all looking after each other and not standing there operating as a slave. And that applies to the country entity, not just the people. Most countries are slave countries to the system. So there are no guidelines for dealing with those who just don't get it. The people will demand they are dealt with once they find out the depths and levels of the criminality that's been going on. Thomas, you discuss mantids, and I listened to Simon Parkes, who has worked with mantids a lot. He says many people confuse them with the ant people, and it sounds like perhaps you have done so. Mantids do not have a group mind like ants do. Their insect relatives are the praying mantis, much different from ants. Per Simon, the mantids do want the earth and humanity to ascend, and they are assisting with that plan. Yes, they did work with the reptilians in the past, but it's more a scenario of work with them or be crushed by them. There's so much wrong with that statement. That's just not correct. The mantids are the brains behind the reptilians. Sorry. And Parkes knows this. Of course, Parkes is half mantid and son of Anu. Where was Parkes when the mantids refused to give up and tidy up their mess? To my knowledge, they are the only group who caused issues in the meetings. They were the ones that were stealing the water. And the idea that the Mantids want the earth and humanity to ascend is beyond a joke. They were the ones responsible for the psychotic AI that was ran by the slaves known as the Greys. Except the Greys refused to work with them anymore. And the idea that the Draco threatened them into working them or crushing them is complete 100% false. They were the brains, the technology, and the reptilians were the thugs, militaristic thugs. They worked together hand in hand and crushed many planets and systems. And so I'm not buying that nonsense from Parkes. I saw a report that said the Russian Federation and Red China, I don't know why they're called that, invoked Article 9 of their Good Neighbours Treaty and declared the employees of Facebook and their handlers in Greylock Company, IDT, Intel and the CIA as hostile enemy targets. I've not seen that report, but if they have, fair play. Because they're all working against us. The BRICS nations amount to about 2/3 of the Earth's population, and in fact went one step further and declared the employees of Google and all subsidies thereof as hostile enemy targets. And they will not waste any time in taking them out, including all doubles of all leaders of them will be taken out because of the CIA's interference in Brazil's election. Have you heard anything about this? BRICS is an extension of the system. They promised much 5 or 6 years ago. What have they delivered? Nothing. They promised funds. Did they deliver? No. It was just a new name that was dragged up. Otherwise they would have made far more progress than they have now. But that was ran by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. They were in on the shareholders. Do you really think the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are going to help a group bring themselves down? No. Now that's not to say that there's not people, governments, agencies and militaries in those nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Although South Africa is a big problem at the moment because they have gone from one extreme to the other, and they will be dealt with. There is people in every country wanting to help. Well, let's not put labels like BRICS onto it, because that was a Rothschild Rockefellers setup. Interested in your thoughts on Insignia, 5-star bank, well it's actually 5-star trust, white spiritual boy affair. If these documents prove legit, we are talking about Kim Possible numbers, 33 to 50 zeros, the kind of which one might speculate off-world purchases and the likes. I've actually seen the accounts of the white spiritual boy and the white wonder spiritual boy and all that, including the signatures. Now, the 5-star is the Bushes, Carlyle Group and other rogue elements, and they're not good. Insignia is probably a similar venture. I can't say I've come across that name. Now all the trusts, the real trusts and valid trusts, stolen trusts I might add, all of them, were wrapped into one. 6,500 trusts is now rolled into one, which is controlled by the Manor World Holding Trust. So there is no white spiritual boy accounts anymore. It's called the Manor World Holding Trust, And in that 6,500, I'm going to repeat this because people keep mentioning it on the internet. Not one of those trusts was called NESARA, GESARA, or Saint Germain Trust. None of them. More agency fun and games to get people distracted. Can you tell if Trey Gowdy is still on the side of Trump? Because there were strange QAnons about Trey Gowdy and that role, black hat or friend of POTUS, his attitude in stepping down for the Lord instead of government. I don't know, I've got to be honest. He looked interesting for a bit, but maybe we've seen this far too often. It's like Simon Parkes. I gave him a chance despite his background, which should have made everyone suspicious. I mean, half-manted and son of Anu, with an Illuminati bloodline family who work for MI5, 6 and the CIA. I mean, you've got to really push the boundaries out to even give the man a chance. But I did. And his first interview was rather good. The intel was fairly spot on. And then halfway through his second interview, he started sidetracking and going backwards and spitting out shite. And this is what they do. It's good cop, bad cop. Good politician, bad politician. Except they're all playing a game. So time will tell whether Trey Gowdy is for the benefits of the people or he's playing a role in the game. Like it was said in the first hour, none at the top are clean. Now, to most people, politicians are at the top. To me, they're not. But those who are at the top, politicians, are not clean. They wouldn't employ them otherwise. And Trump himself will have skeletons in the closet. But should that prevent him draining the swamp? No. If he has the balls to take it on, and if that's what he's doing, then as long as he hasn't been interfering with kids, then whatever else he's done can be dealt with at a later date. Because what's taking place now is far more important than whether he slept with some slapper 11 years ago. You know, they're all bad. People are, is Sessions good, is he not? They've all been involved in something that has not been beneficial for and by the people. All of them. You know, Trump is on record as saying he used the bankruptcy laws. 6 times he was bankrupt, didn't pay a load of his staff, and just carried on. Bailed out by the Rothschilds. He admitted that himself. Well, that's not good behaviour, is it? In anyone's book. But if he does what he appears to be doing, and raises at least 4 of the factions, maybe 5, I have my doubts about the 5th one, then who cares who he slept with 11 years ago, really? At least he didn't do it in the White House like a certain Democrat did. My awakening symptoms are intense in bed at night. I have spastic shakes, jerks, head rolling back and forth, and white flashes in my eyes when closed. Is this common, and doesn't it happen to you? It doesn't hurt or cause me fear. Well, people have different things that happen to them. Some of the stuff that's happened to me, I best not. One of the quirks, I'm going to mention this now because it is kind of strange. The jerks and the shakes, I think most people go through that. and it's the frequencies interacting, which then causes a spasm in the muscle. But one of the strange things that keeps happening to me on a frequent basis now is it feels like someone's spraying ice water on the ankle, and only one of them. It really is a strange experience. I can feel ice water being sprayed on my ankle, but is there any water there? Is there anyone around? No. And it used to happen maybe once or twice a month. Now it's about 15, 20 times. So I wonder if anyone else has experienced that. But like you said, it doesn't cause you any hurt or fear, which is something none of us should have, fear. Not a good energy, a soul development frequency to have that. And the reason I said 4 factions and maybe 5 rolls into the next question. Trump is backed by Israel. How can their motivations be good? Well, there is concerns over Trump's link with the Zionists, not Israel, the Zionists. The Zionists have no interest whatsoever in the Israeli people. None. They're in poverty as well, whilst they're spending money on weapons. So, if he's connected with the Zionists and they take the other 4 factions out, then that's a win for us. But ultimately we'll have to remove them as well. But as the other factions collapse, we'll also pick up a lot of their minions to come and work with us. So the 6th faction will rise exponentially. So it remains to be seen, but there are concerns within myself and the team of Trump's close connections with the Zionist movement, based out of Israel, but they're based in pretty much every country. Hopefully not. When I meditate, I get a lot of electricity starting from my feet moving up. Is that normal? Yes. That's your energies rising to your crown. It's a good sign. If it stops anywhere, you have a block in the energies, that particular energy section. Not chakra. Energy section. Chloe did a rather good document on why you shouldn't call it chakra and call it energy center instead. That's available on the files on the Facebook, and it also might be on the Think Different site. But if that surging stops, make note of where it stops, locate which particular energy center that is. It could be the solar plexus, it could be the heart, it could be the throat. And then you have to clear it. Do a clearing and do it again and see if it goes through that blockage. The ultimate flow is it goes from the feet and out of the crown. So, good stuff. Do you have any knowledge about the Tartarian civilization and empire and how it vanished? Not that much, to be quite honest. My knowledge is further back of the Rus. There will have been elements of the Rus in the Tartarian civilization, but it was way in advance of the rest of Russia, so it may have been one and the same. It depends on which time period. Now, the Tartaria was on the maps as short as 500 years ago, and then suddenly it got completely erased. Like most things, all the books got rewritten, all the words got changed, all the vowels suddenly and letter J's got added in, and things got wiped from history. It's like I can't imagine that many people are aware we had an extra continent called the Arya that sank north of Russia. No mention of it, is there? So it vanished because of the order and the top end of the control system doing everything to crush Russia because of its past knowledge. Not only were they more spiritually advanced than any other race of human on this planet in any time, they were also teaching the dark forces how to not be that way. Not eliminating them, wiping them out, helping them. So they all became teachers. And there's a lot of archaeological secrets, there's a lot of ancient treasures, there's a lot of ancient sites, be it pyramids, and a lot of portals in Russia. There's also the hidden closed 13th Earth energy point in Moscow. If all the other 12 are clear, the 13th one opens. That then means the planet is back to the flower of life pattern. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry I don't have more on Tartaria. That's as much as I know. Do you have any knowledge of a liar priest? No, I don't, sorry. I think this is the same as the previous question. Talks about the 5-Star Trust. Yes, I'm well aware of who they are. And whose signatures are on the committee of 300. We're well aware of who they are as well. I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken, that 300 is kind of disbanded in many aspects. I'll have to double check that, but I'm almost certain I mentioned that on a previous show. Are you aware of the Pacer French royal family? Minimal, I have to say. I think they're more linked in with Rothschilds. But the French Rothschilds are the worst. They're the ones that then took over Britain, the crown, and then went carrying on. Could the Pacer be the head of the snake that really rules the world? No. I'll tell you the head of the snake is later. Is it possible to contact Q and ask if they can have a Trump turn back the act that pharma companies can't get sued about vaccine injuries? Well, this is, all that can be done once all the inner war is completed. I do get it's important, because it is, but it is a consequence of the system we have now. The key is to bring that system down and implement a new one. And so all these bogus laws and GMOs and vaccines and pharmaceuticals that do more harm than good, in fact all of them are poison. There's not a single pharmaceutical drug that's not a poison to the system. Don't care which one you take. They're all poisons. And they know that. But they're part of the external war. Like I said, I'm not downplaying the importance of it, because we have highlighted it a lot. But there are bigger priorities, and there's not enough people to go through it all in a speedy sort of time. Look at what's going on in the American government. That one item did Russia interfere with the election, and it's gone on for over 12 months, and it's roped in all kinds of people and all kinds of countries. That involves a lot of manpower and female power to investigate in a world where you've got people in prominent positions are doing their utmost to avoid being exposed. It's not easy, and those people have to be dealt with, because they're the people that are taking backhanders from pharmaceutical companies like Rumsfeld pushing through aspartame, because he was one of the shareholders. Those people have to be removed. That's part of the inner war, the one that's going on behind the scenes. You're seeing elements, more than enough elements of it in public view now to realise that it is actually going on. John McCain being the current example, but that was more public. Perhaps some would already have been John McCain's privately. What is the Alaya doctrine? I don't know what that is, sorry. I think it's related to Hebrew and Jewish, but I'm not too sure. What is happening to the world with extreme Muslims? Thinking they can attack white women for being what they learn about us, which is a total lie. Are they going to take over the world because white women are attacked more and more, raped and what else across Europe? And is there any way to give hope to white women what to do, or when will this be stopped? After seeing the talk by Tommy Robinson, what happens in, i.e. Luton, his own town, and is happening all over the place in Europe. Are there extreme Muslims? Yes, they're a minority, and I mean a minority. Most of the so-called extreme Muslims have been paid, bought and paid for, to do the very things that you're describing. Deliberately. They came across as ordinary migrants into Europe and were seeded into the fleeing populace to then cause trouble. So then, that's the problem. You've provided the reaction that the Muslims are taking over the world and the Muslims are raping everybody else. And they'll give you the solution, which is World War III, which was forecast in 1888, not a prophecy, a plan by Albert Pike. The clash of the civilizations, World War III, between the Christians and the Muslims, and after they've all wiped each other out, we end up with a one world religion. It's a program. It's not to do with general Muslims at all. None whatsoever. And everything to do with paid mercenaries going in and causing mayhem. I remember an earlier show when Sky News in the UK were filming a funeral ceremony of the British and American soldiers returning, and there was people in white cloths shouting death to Americans and death to British soldiers, whilst the people were mourning their dead. All very divide and conquer, and you can understand the reaction of why people would dislike them. except those clowns in the cloths then went round the back of the houses, took the cloths off and had British police and soldier uniforms on, and was caught on the Sky News camera from the helicopter. This is what's going on. So they want you to hate on Muslims, and the average Muslim wouldn't do anything like what you're describing. None whatsoever. You have to see through the illusion. You are providing a reaction that they will give you the solution, what they always wanted. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem is people are committing heinous crimes at the behest of others. They're not doing it because Muslims hate white women. They're doing it because they're told to do so. And they've done it in every European country. So then the people spend more time hating on Muslims and not focusing on the crimes that is going on, where we're all having our lifestyles reduced to barely existing, because the whole focus is on, oh, them nasty Muslims. You have to start seeing behind the illusion. Take the illusion away and see it for what it is. A program. Don't give them the reaction. And Tommy Robinson is working for the Zionist group. Sorry. What will be for time? 2:15. Now there's a renewed push this year to invoke prophecies, plans, from Revelations, ignore that, and other religious texts, despite the artificial nature. Did the negative forces underestimate the teachings of Radomir, aka Jesus, the Greek meaning Hail Zeus, exactly, in ultimately ending the cyclic control measures imposed on the planet? Yes, they have underestimated the will of the people badly. There are other reasons. The head of the snake, I'll mention that again later. Are all jinn bad? No. But they have been largely co-opted into working for the dark forces. The jinn were here before we were. They think this planet belongs to them, except the council have now designated it for humans. And the jinn have to come to the table, the same as the others have, and learn to cohabitate with all. There's no need to be that dark. They have to come into balance. Is it possible for the jinn and a human to be in love? It's possible. A lot of the jinn interactions that most people experience, I would say those chances are rather slim. Perhaps I'd like you to give what is your description of a jinn, because it may not be what you think. So, is Anna von Wright trying to protect Pope Francis' reputation? Not necessarily, no. She's trying to protect the Vatican, which is still ran by the Nazis, cloven back. I'm not convinced that Anna von Reitz is the private secretary to Pope Francis, or shall I give her real name, Anna von Reitzinger? I think she was the secretary to Pope Ratzinger, SS officer. And Klovenbach is the Black Pope. Pope Francis is a puppet. Has he committed crimes? Yes, the ones I have full knowledge of. To date, I've yet to see sufficient proof that he was fiddling with children. He certainly covered it up, because that's the role of higher up, to protect the church. And of course he takes the flak for it, because he's the face of the Catholic Church. But he's not the control. And he has committed war crimes. He was providing weaponry to the Argentinian junta. And there is proof to support that. So he should be tried for war crimes. As I say, to date I've yet to see sufficient evidence linking them with child interference. May well be the case. But Anna von Reitz is working for the factions. Sorry. She proved it when we set her up with, we sent out bogus intel, which went into Langley. And Anna von Reitz spat it out. Oh my, big mistake. It's nothing we didn't know, but it exposed herself to others. Is there any intel or provable breakdown with what happened in Hawaii with the hurricane? It was designed for a certain purpose, except it put the fires out. It replenished the lost fresh water and was split in two. End of hurricane. Was the egg timer time flipped during the 3 days of darkness? Yes. I'm also working on another potential theory. Of the 3 days of darkness being related to the moon, and not necessarily, these things have patterns, and they happen not just on one level or one layer. They have a repeating pattern. But the Cabal and the Satanics and Marduk and all the others do everything by the moon cycle. And if people think the moon is good, think again. Everything they do, high level meetings, Harren and Farren, UN meetings, Bilderberg meetings, rituals, are all linked with the moon cycle. Now the moon cycle is 28 days, and yet a month is 31 generally. There's your 3 days, because for 3 days the moon goes dark. It could be correct, it could be not. It's something I was pondering on this week. Lots of info from American intelligence media. Is Mitch McConnell's wife ties to China another place to investigate, when you were talking about looking at the wives? Not really, no. Yes, but it's not the highest priority, is what I'm saying. Where are we next? What really happened to John McCain? He died. For now. Here in Holland, it's very expensive to travel by public transport. The prices here are incredibly expensive. For me, it feels like if Holland is the most expensive public transport country in the world, for people who don't have a driver's license and a car, it's unpayable to go with public transport. Do you have any ideas how this can be solved, or how the funds will do it in the future? That's another one of the changes, obviously, that will come over time. It's obviously, it feels like a high priority to the person who sent the question, and I get that. But in the scheme of things, in general, it's not. There'll be some figures shortly that will astonish you all, and may provide some perspective. Is Pope Francis set to resign? As Leo Zagami states. I wouldn't believe a single word that comes out of Leo Zagami's mouth, being quite honest. I remember him on Cosmic Voice with Drake. Oh boy. Leo Zagami is Illuminati, bloodline family. He's never done anything or said anything that has been of value to we the people, in my opinion. Others might think different, and that's fine. People ask my opinion, that's my opinion. Pope Francis could get thrown under the bus because the heat is being turned on him when it really should be turned on the church. They always sacrifice, send someone else out to take the blame, and Pope Francis is taking the blame. Like I said, all that's been proven on him currently is war crimes in Argentina. But if he was actually trying to help and fix things, I think people would overlook that for now while he completed the process. But he has no say in the matter whatsoever. It's the grey Pope 3 levels above him, and the black Pope 6 levels above him that run that church, and so he will be the sacrificial lamb. Is that right? Not really. Will that change the way the Catholic Church works? No. We went from a Nazi to a Jesuit. Did it go any better? No. Because you haven't removed the main system that runs that church. You have said the same about Trump and America. Unless he brings down the 26 layers of secrecy above presidential level, or gets them to toe the line, Trump can say whatever he likes. This time we have a president who got more support than the one 50 odd years ago who wanted to bring them down. But this is the way it works. People will go, it's Pope Francis, it's Pope Francis. No, 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 and no. It's the system behind Pope Francis that's the problem. But it all points out that he is going to get thrown under the bus. But unless you change the system, it won't make a blind bit of difference. As California and other places of large populations of more nature pro-life beings continue to be taken out with 5G, chemtrails, GMO, etc., intentionally by the elite powers, as elite powers they themselves have planned, and seems to be working smoothly from what I can see with my more limited tunnel vision. I do not see how we are winning inner or outer war. Hopeful real progress to evolve is happening in a real scheme of things, not the other way around, for them and the betterment of all, the majority of us, and not just for the few who seem to care more about themselves with their greed, lack of empathy, compassion and heart. Yes, I get that. If you live in California, then obviously what's going on there is of utmost importance to you. And things happening like that in your own neighbourhood tends to make you focus entirely on that neighbourhood, and it's all going wrong. But it's all going wrong in California. But for those who have listened to me long enough, I did warn they were doing that 4 years ago. 2014. In fact, it may even be 2013. Eventually it'll all get reversed, but everything takes time. But if you don't think we're winning the war, then perhaps you need to listen to the next piece. This will be the final piece for tonight's show. And as most or all of you can see, things are heating up on all levels now. Threats here, threats there, as they lose their control, wealth, asset bases, and also credibility. Of course, this week they lashed out at Kim, myself, and the trust. It's what they do. Blame someone else or something else. The problem is their own arrogance and lack of real knowledge of how this planet and the system works is the real issue. They never thought we would work it out, then counteract it, and then attack it to the levels it's at now. And they are completely stunned. We still have much work to do, as some of the questions I've alluded to. But you would be staggered, as I mentioned earlier, at the heads of state and heads of countries know so very little of how the world really works, be it in finance, social understanding, their standing, laws, or the control system. They literally know next to nothing. Not all their fault, I might add, but you see, that is how the system worked. A system that was designed to solely harvest us and this planet of all its resources and then destroy it, which they have done, including the mantids, to many other worlds, but not this one. Now, people often speak of the event or events and ask, when's it happening? My answer is, which event? And isn't it the case that many events have already happened? If you think not, then you've just not connected the dots enough. Which is understandable, given the amount of bullshittery all over the internet. But here's a reminder. Events that have already taken place. 1. We're not dead. We should have all been gone by 2012. 2. Kim took over the trust and designated all of it for the benefit of the countries and its people and not the clans. 3. The peace treaty ending 16,500 years of martial law. That also ended the shipping war and law more commonly known as Admiralty law, or better known as maritime law, in 2016. Event 4. The Draco left in 2015, except a few minions. More on them later. 5. The parents. Human 1.0, we are 2.0. Went from 21 down to 2. Both are insane, neither are here anymore, and only have a VI projection of themselves in here, virtual intelligence, and one of them is known as the Red Queen. Some of you may have met her in the dream time. Unpleasant little effer, in my opinion. The next layer of the system, the Covens, event 6, collapsed from 13 down to 2, and we are unsure at this point whether that 2 is now down to 0. Event 7, the Illuminati as it's known no longer exists. It is now broken up into 5 factions: the Jesuits, the Asians, the Zionists, the Nazis, and the Secret Society. All are fighting each other and also infighting in their own faction. Event 8. The Rothschilds, who support all 5 factions, have this year alone had to fire sale a number of their properties, sold most of their stocks off this year, lost control of the Crown, lost control of Washington DC and many other regions. They also lost control of their mercenaries, as they are refusing to take on Rothschild's hit squad tasks now. Their alleged quantum system they rolled out crashed and burned on its first attempt. A top Rothschild is in big, serious health trouble, I'm hearing. Not confirmed yet. Event 9. Soul traps, memory wipes and forced reincarnation ended. Event 10. The Saturn Moon Matrix and the Saturn entity Set-An rendered obsolete. Event 11. CERN also rendered obsolete in August of 2015. Event 12. The psychotic AI built by the Mantids, ran by the Greys, rendered obsolete. Event 13. The Matrix, the Veil, or the simulation also rendered obsolete, although only remnants in our memory loss keep it real. In reality, it's not. Event 14. Along with 185 minions, the head of the snake, Marduk, was taken out permanently following a request by us to remove him, which was sent to the council. The council agreed, and we removed him permanently, the head of the snake, in late 2016. That was a big loss to them, as only he knew the full system, including the financial system and how it all worked. Event 15. Kim and the Trust took over the whole banking system and has blocked them all from accessing it. Despite numerous attempts at hacking, usually one day before the mythical RV, all of them failed. Kim has now proven to all and sundry only she has the codes that work, only she can release the trust funds, only she has the assets to support the release. She has released some funds to some countries, but clowns are all blocking all attempts of funds reaching America currently, as this country is under financial assassination order by the Rothschilds, the Dragon Groups, SSP and others. Event 16. Project Bluebeam was due to be released in the past 2 years. It failed. That would have caused mayhem. What was supposed to be released in 2017, global biological extinction weapons, rendered obsolete or failed. Event 18. World War III, which was designated to start in 1990 and has repeatedly failed ever since. Event 19. The collection of all countries' in-ground resources to go to the UN. All future in-ground resources, I might add, failed. Event 20. Kim took over the UN, stripped their assets they had stolen, and gave them all back to the countries to whom it belonged. Event 21. The alternative media came out of the dark shadow cast as conspiracy theorists and nutters, as most so-called conspiracies are now in the public eye and are based in fact. This despite alternative media being a fraction of what it once was. The few left carried the can, the co-opted and the agency-paid and coven-paid shills laid bare by this show and also Randy Morgan's. Event 22. Portal people, aka mainstream media, trashed into almost oblivion, now considered by many as fake news. Event 23. Churches laid bare for what they really are, a total sham. That was an initial experiment played on the people. All religions are part of that experiment to take you away from who and what you are and make you forget source. Pedos in the church exposed. Financial skullduggery in the church exposed. Heinous slayings of the people's teachers and their offspring. Slaying of seers, visionaries and psychics all burnt at the stake exposed. The church created war for their sacrifices to their so-called gods that killed multi-millions. Their satanic behaviours and horrific rituals also exposed. Event 24. Politicians and stars, or so-called stars, exposed for fraud, sexual misconduct, cult practice, satanic behaviours, and ritual and sacrifice abuse. Ritual abuse and sacrifice. Event 25. The GMO kings, Monsanto, yes I said it right, crashed and burned. Event 26. Chinese elders proven fake. Despite various detailed attempts to seek them out, no one on this planet knows who they are, for good reason. They don't exist. Event 27. No Nibiru, no fake asteroids hitting us, no RVs, no GCRs, NASARAs, GESARAs, OPPT, ZIMs, DONGs, dinars and cryptocurrencies all rendered fake or obsolete. Event 28. The IMF and the World Bank exposed as financial terrorists, and other organisations, major ones, will follow that description and will be dealt with. Event 29. Charities and fake foundations exposed for money laundering, trafficking for sexual and labour purposes, child trafficking for labour, sexual abuse, adrenochrome and ritual sacrifice. Event 30. We made peace with many of the non-terrestrials here, and work continues on that front. Now the last event for tonight is ongoing. But never forget how far you have come as a person or a group. You've all learned the truth to varying degrees of learning, unravelled many of the lies, unveiled many of the masks, and carried on despite threats, ridicule and anger directed at you from so-called friends, family and loved ones. Many have learned how to be more compassionate, more caring, more sharing. Many now speaking of we and us and less of me and I. Many learned, in THI anyway, how to defend yourselves via shielding. Learned how to live and love life again. Learned personal responsibility and perspective. Various people have quit drugs, quit alcohol, quit pharmaceuticals and stopped suicides. They're all events in and of themselves. Now all these are events bigger than you thought. And now it's all been laid out for all to see tonight. Perhaps it will give you all the time to reconsider, when is the event happening? Because the answer is most of it already has. We have much to look forward to as we strip bare the service to self clowns, the special ones, the bloodline families and their minions who have consumed our energy and souls in vast quantities. The psychopaths intent on war and destruction. We have an opportunity to create a world in our image, not the Lord and his band of reptilians, but in our image, our way and our path. One that doesn't require harvesting us or killing anyone. One that doesn't require overthrowing governments, as the reality is they know nothing of what's gone on or going on. They're just learning. A world that doesn't require spying on everyone. A world that doesn't require starving 40% of the people. A world that doesn't have 1.1 billion people that lack access to safe drinking water, or 2.6 billion people that lack adequate sanitation. A third. A world that doesn't require killing 47,000 children per day. Yes, you heard that right. A world that doesn't require millions living in poverty, where 3 billion on this planet live on less than $2.50 per day. Yes, I did say per day. Or 1.3 billion live on less than $1.25 per day. Or the 1 billion children living in poverty around the world. While death and destruction psychopaths spend 1.7 trillion per year globally on military and weaponry A world that doesn't require 1.2 billion who still are living in 2018 without electricity. A world that doesn't require fighting over resources, land or control. It requires none of that. That was their system, not ours. Everyone has a moral and outright duty to fight, strive and work hard to create that better world for us all. An obligation to protect and serve humanity. An obligation to protect the children. And lay the foundations for our journey from a childlike backward species, requiring others to look after us, to a peaceful spacefaring race of which we can be deemed a proud and worthy adult species. Peace, prosperity and freedom are not something you wish for. You have forgotten you have the ability to create it, not wish for it. And it's up to each and every one of you to create that reality. You wanted events. You've already had them. Now go out and be a part of creating our new world. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. United we stand, divided we fall. Bye for now.